Welcome to Toffee TV. Today I am joined by the Mirror Football Northern correspondent and other publications as well. It is David Maddock, looking sharp. David, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. We were just discussing before we started that, but my hair's gone absolutely crazy in this lockdown without a cut for about 3 months. So I'm having to gel it all down. So I've got a slick look today.
I'm feeling your pain with this Barnett, mate, honestly. Ped just shaved this all off, but I haven't got the bottle to goat skinhead, so it is what it is.
I've not had a haircut, since about November either, so it's good.
It's mad.
It's saving me money.
Just on this, obviously the current situation at the moment, it's such a strange time, isn't it? And for the likes of yourself, I mean, we're struggling here with the football channel trying to talk about football when there's no football. But what's it like being a football correspondent and there isn't any football to talk about? You found it difficult?
Well, I found it a bit impossible, to be honest. When the lockdown first happened and the football was stopped, it was such a serious situation because people were dying. So, a lot of people were dying. And the country realised that this was like the biggest crisis for many, many years. So you couldn't really write about things like football, transfers, things like that. It just seemed too trivial. So the only thing you could write about was how coronavirus was affecting football, how, what the implications for football were, when it could possibly come back, that sort of thing. But obviously, there's only so much you can write about that. And then eventually you have to turn back towards the actual footballing issues. And that was a difficult judgment for all media. I mean, I think even for you to a certain extent, can you do trivial stuff? And if so, at what point into the lockdown? I think eventually we got to that point. I think now, hopefully, we're beyond the curve has flattened, etc., and we're beyond the worst of it, and we can start thinking about and talking and writing about football as a pursuit that takes people's minds off it again. But it was very difficult, and the worst thing of all is you're writing about football without any prospect of football matches, and that just seems pointless. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's the whole point of football is the matches, and if there aren't any matches and you don't know when their next will be, then it makes it really demoralising. I found it, but here we are, and I think it's coming back. So
from there, I mean, I was just going to move on to that. I mean, it does look like obviously we've seen the players at the moment in phase 1 in training. I believe there's a vote tomorrow, I think, to whether they can go to phase 2, which is a bit more, which is contact in training as well. Before you answer about the Premier League, have you watched any of the Bundesliga football? I've watched virtually every game I could just because I've missed football that much. I've even watched the second division games and everything. But if you've watched it, and how have you found it?
I did. I watched the opening weekend, yeah, and like you, watched sort of everything I could. And I'm not one of these who said it wasn't football, it wasn't the same. I think there was some. I mean, you could tell that there was commitment on part of the players, that they were running, they were fit, they were getting into it. It was decent football, but of course there's no atmosphere. And that was the weird thing. That's the hard thing, because even on TV, they tend to turn the crowd noise up at times to create that atmosphere, because sometimes it can be a bit sterile. And obviously no noise made it difficult. But I mean, it was interesting. I actually saw after the first weekend that I can't remember which game it was now, but one of the players I was watching was run 18 kilometres in the game, and that's kind of further than they generally run. So I think in a way, they're coming back pretty fit. Certainly in Germany, they're coming back fit and ready. So I don't think it will be that bad.
I think for me, and this has got mixed reactions when we've discussed it, but I'd like to see, or I'd like to hear some crowd noise, whether it's just an underlying, I don't know, because the way I look at it, David, and I don't know whether you'd agree or disagree, but for me, it's going to be a television sport for, say, the next 6 to 8 months, it looks like, because at the minute there's no vaccine, there's no, I've read something which is quite bizarre, but it probably, to scientific people, it probably makes massive sense that because the virus is dying out quickly, we're struggling to develop the vaccine, and they wanted to hang around a bit, which it just seemed mad, doesn't it? But that's kind of where we're up to. But for the next kind of, like I said, 6 to 8 months before we're all allowed back in a stadium in close proximity, it's not a responsibility, but isn't it the opportunity to make it look and sound as good as it possibly can while we're waiting to go back in? And with that, that's why I want to hear some crowd noise, because I just find it it is a bit flat here, and the players screaming for the ball and stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree, actually. I see a lot of people kind of taking the piss out of piping noise in and things like that. But I think it's worth exploring, because it would change things for the TV. And obviously, we're all going to be watching on TV, as you said. You can write off next season now for fans. There's no way next season there'll be fans in the stadiums. I suspect for the whole season. So I reckon, as you suggested, a year, i.e. the next season, before there's any prospect of fans coming into stadiums. And for the reason I say that is, like, just say Old Trafford, 70-odd thousand fans there. And there's no way you can allow 70,000 fans into a stadium when you don't have a vaccine for this virus. So, and people say, well, it's open air, and it is, but they've got to have security. Somebody's got to frisk down fans, as they go in. Mm. And if you're doing thousands of them, you're putting them in harm's way, basically. So we are without football as supporters going to the ground. I reckon for the remainder of this season and next season. So then you've got to start looking at how to best make that experience, because and we'll all be watching it, I'm sure. I'm absolutely certain. I don't think people say, I'm not watching it because it's not the same without fans there. I'm certain people will watch at home, and when there's stuff riding on it, especially. So making the experience, and I wonder whether, these days, the technology, surely there's a way to actually kind of create a noise, which, remember, always follows the action. The noise always comes after the action, if you like. Yeah. It starts to build as the action builds. And then when, like, for instance, if a goal goes in, the noise comes instantaneously afterwards, but that slight delay. So, surely there's a way to build a noise if people are attacking, and then drop it if they don't score, but if they do score, etc. It's not beyond the sort of technology, I'm sure. So, and that could be an answer, but it is an area where I think that they probably will have to look at it. Maybe not for the rest of this season. There's only sort of 9 games left for each club, or 10 for a couple. But certainly, if they go into next season without fans, then definitely look at it.
I know the Bundesliga, for their own fans who are watching on TV, they have 2 feeds, I think, with noise feeds. So we're watching it on BT or whatever. We're not getting that, but I wish we were. As I watched, I think it was Leverkusen game at the weekend, and they had the cutouts in some of the sections. And when I first heard about this, it was just like, what? That is ridiculous. But actually, from a TV perspective, watching it, it did look like there was crowd. So I'm not condoning that they charge £17 a cutout per person. I think the club should foot that personally, or the TV company or whatever, because I don't think any crowd person should be having to pay, any fan should be having to pay that kind of money. But just aesthetically, as a TV sport, you're trying to make it look and sound as good as it can, because I think it will put people off if it is empty stadiums and you can hear the players. I really do. And think what you have to do, if it is like you're saying, and you feel as though next season could be written off as well, because at this moment, let's be honest, there's no guarantee whatsoever we'll be back in the stadium next season, like you said. No vaccine, big crowds, you sat, in my seat in the upper Bullens, legs are touching and everything, so you're right next to people. that can't be allowed at the minute. So they have to, as a TV and the Premier League and everything, get together to try and make this look and sound as good as it possibly can. So that's where I'm up to. In terms of the Premier League, you've just said before, it's coming back. You know, there's the projected date is anywhere between the 12th and the 26th, I think, of June. So next month. I mean, do you feel like at the moment it's the right thing to do, or are you still a little bit like it's a little bit too early?
I think it's the right thing. I think it's the right time. I don't think they'll come back until at least the 20th. So I reckon we're looking now towards the sort of back end of next month, and by then, all shops will be open. People will be back at work. They'll be travelling, you know, on public transport, and it kind of will be a different environment for football to come back into. So I think that is the right time. It's a tricky one because for me, I mean, I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter, a lot of people, you know, contacting the paper on our online sort of forums, and a lot of people are saying, first of all, it's not going to be the same, but that argument just doesn't hold, because, as I said, if you wait for it to be the same, you could be without football for 2 years. You know, it could easily be. What you were saying before about the vaccine, I could actually tell you the reason why it's hard to. I could go into great detail on why it's hard to get a vaccine. I won't, because it's quite boring. But it's unlikely there'll be a vaccine anytime soon, certainly until next year. So we're going to have to get used to the idea of no big crowds. I mean, you know, maybe some of the smaller clubs, maybe there's a way to have smaller gatherings, but not Premier League, absolutely not. And in which case, if your argument is we can't have it, it's not the same, then that means you're just not having football. And I think, well, you know, it's what it is, you know. Things happen, so you deal with it, and then you adapt to it. And I think the Premier League has to adapt. I think people have said, oh, the conditions they're going to restart in are not the same as the conditions they stopped in. But so what? You know, they're the conditions. You just have to accept them and get on with it. And that's that, you know. And actually, we might come to this later, but I think it might just help Everton as it happens. But we'll get onto that later. The other argument is it's putting lives at risk. And I understand that argument, and it's a very sensitive subject. But for me, the safety of the players, particularly, I think, is almost enhanced by the tests that they'll be doing, the checks that they'll be doing. And it's not just the actual testing for the virus, which they'll get 3 times a week. They'll also have heart rate monitors, as they do, as you know, every training session. They'll have their oxygen levels checked. And actually, if any of them get the virus, they will know much quicker than probably had they contracted it, as many did before the lockdown or during the lockdown. So it's been proven that the earlier you detect the virus, far more chance you have of surviving it. And the reality is, if you leave it really late and you end up being taken into hospital, put on a ventilator, 80% of those people die because it's too late. Whereas if they were able to get treatment earlier, then the vast majority of people don't suffer those problems, don't get to those dangerous levels. And I think, so the argument that you're putting them at risk, I think you could counter that argument by saying, well, actually, it will help. And I'll give you an example. There was one of the 6 who tested positive had no idea that he obviously had the virus. In fact, I think all 6 who tested last week positive were asymptomatic and had no idea, didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. And they had, I think 3 of them had families, something like that. And So they were then able to isolate from their families. So, therefore not pass it on, whereas they may well have done to their families. So I think that's a difficult argument. But for me, I think now they can make it safe. And I'm not suggesting for a second no one is going to contract coronavirus in the return of football. But I think the numbers, as we've seen in Germany, will actually be quite low. And that being the case, the safety is probably very high.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's obviously people will have the moral view and everything else, and that's right. I'm never saying, I'm not going to argue against anyone who's got that opinion, but I think in terms of people are saying, like, why is football got to come back? I think if we don't play it, we can't, like you said before, we can't just leave it until a vaccine is magically appears and we all take it, because half the football clubs, if not more, wouldn't be in existence by the time it returns, because you can't simply run businesses that don't create any money because you're not doing what the business is for. And football clubs can't. We've heard Crystal Palace, we've heard Brighton talking, Burnley saying if we're not back playing by September, we won't have football clubs here because we can't afford it. So it's a tough one, but that's what it is.
I absolutely agree, and I think you look, other businesses are coming back now, and actually a lot of businesses are going to come back and be less affected than football will be. So football, like a lot of hospitality businesses, is going to suffer more than most anyway. So to say, oh no, you can't have football, but you can go to a department store, you can go and play golf, you can meet your friends in the park, but you can't watch football on TV. I think that will no longer hold water. And the reality is, as you say, I mean, Malaga, basically, the football club, and they were a big Spanish club only a couple of seasons ago. They've just announced a load of redundancies and effectively filed for administration and have effectively gone bust, because already their financial situation wasn't great, and the lack of football and the problems caused by the virus have put them into real financial difficulty. There will be a lot of clubs in the not just in the lower leagues in the UK, but actually in the Premier League, as some of the names you pointed out. They're going to struggle if they don't come back very soon, and don't come back to complete this season either, because a lot of money will be lost otherwise.
Just on, you said something before about, I think it might have been when we were off air, actually, we were just mentioning about the transfer window. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, to talk about a transfer window because we don't know what's going on. We're all reading stuff about, clubs struggling 1 minute and then the next minute coming back with, £100 million, especially our club, Everton. We're signing everyone, and you're thinking, well, are we? Because there isn't any money. How do you see, just in general, the transfer market going? Not necessarily for Everton, but just across the Premier League, maybe even Europe. In your opinion, how do you think it'll play out?
Well, if we're looking across Europe, I can not see any other outcome than the transfer is deflated massively across the board, all across Europe. And I just don't think you'll see clubs with money to spend like we've had in the past. It's always been top down in football. The big clubs spend a lot of money, and that forces prices up, and then it forces the clubs just below them to spend more money. And it's that terrible inflationary effect. Most clubs are going to lose a lot of money. And takes a couple of English examples. Manchester United have already said they've lost over 100 million already because of the effects of the coronavirus. They've posted big losses. I think their debts went up by over 300 million in the last financial year, in part because of that. They will have to look at how much they're going to lose over the next year. And I did a few calculations, and I reckon that clubs in the top 6 or 8 in the Premier League, and you'd include Everton in that, could lose upwards of 100 million just without fans at games, and the money that they will have to renegotiate some TV deals just for this season, and then let's say next season without fans, the top 8 at least are going to lose minimum 100 million, probably closer for the, say, United, Manchester City, Liverpool. They're going to lose 150 million over just, and that's if football this season ends and next season is played behind closed doors. You'll quite enjoy this because I can give you the example of Liverpool. Liverpool have actually only got 2 players out of contract this summer, and next summer it's the same. They've only got 2 players out of contract, and that's great if you think, oh yeah, well, we want to keep all our squad together. Fantastic, and it was good management in a sense. But now, when you're looking at a fixed wage cost, which is what they've got, because every single one of their big players is on a contract until 2023 or 24, that means they have to pay those wages. There's no getting rid of the players because they're all on long contracts. But their income is reduced. So when your outgoings are fixed, but your income is reduced, you've got a problem. What do you do about that? You try and sell players, but there's no market anymore to sell them, or you just don't buy players. And I think that's what will happen to a lot of clubs. They're just going to have to basically take into account the losses they're going to make over the next 12 to 18 months, and then look at their wage costs and look at their transfer spending. And the transfer spending is the one thing you can easily affect, i.e. don't buy players. So, I mean, there'll still be transfers, but you won't. Everton are a great example. We probably would both agree they needed to sign 4 or 5 players in the summer. They can't do that now, and certainly not like in terms of spending, say, over 100 million, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to look at maybe a key player and then loan deals, etc. Clever ways of getting players in if they want to bring more than that. So across the board, the spending is going to be affected. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? Like you say, because virtually everybody will be affected by it, and it's whether there's another way to look at it. Is FFP going to be relaxed, or the P&L regulations, are they going to be relaxed? Well, we're not hearing at the moment that there's going to be any changes to that, and if there isn't, if it's staying as it is, then you're right. It's going to be slim pickings, certainly on transfer front for big these big transfers. You're saying 150 million for Jadon Sancho, and you're like, United aren't paying 150 million £150 this summer when they're having to pay back money already, 20 million or whatever it is. So
I saw that Napoli centre half. I can never pronounce his name.
Koulibaly.
Yeah, that's it, Koulibaly.
Yeah.
Everton were linked with him. Manchester United have been linked. Liverpool were linked with him for a little while, and they were saying 200 million. And I was like, 200 million for a centre half this summer when everybody's going to be losing 150 million or whatever. And I've noticed the last couple of weeks, suddenly this 200 million transfer fee, which was being bandied around in the Italian papers only about 3 weeks ago, the last week or so, suddenly that's 40 million, and it's like, so there's no way that these players, the Sanchos and the Koulibalys, and even Timo Werner, they were saying he's going to cost 55 million. I don't think anybody's going to pay 55 million for Werner, when in a year's time he'll cost 25 million, so it's... Everton keep getting linked with so many players, and I mean, I can see them making a signing, transfer signing for money, and then I can see them making signings in different ways. I think that's the way it'll work out. Totally
agree with you. And then just on Everton, just because we're on it there with Ancelotti, like moving forward. I mean, I know we had you in when Marco Silva was the manager, and we had a really great chat. And we'll have you back in when we can not socially distance, and we'll talk a bit more. We'll talk a bit more about Ancelotti when you come in, but just a basic overview of it. Was it, in your opinion, a good bit of business by Everton to bring him in, and do you think he is the right kind of manager that the club needed?
Yeah, I mean, good bit of business, great bit of business, unbelievable business because he is a top-class manager. There's absolutely no doubt. And do you know what? It's a shame because I haven't had too much time to get to know him because obviously all press conference stopped. But in the time that I had to sort of, in press conferences, etc., to speak to him, he's a really nice guy as well. Like a genuinely decent guy. He's very funny, and he also is not afraid to speak about stuff. Which you think like top class managers who've been at all the top clubs, they tend to be coached and trained into not saying anything and being diplomatic. But he seems happy to talk, and talk in a really wry way as well. His humour is good, and he's a clever guy. And I think how can you not say he's a great signing with his record? Every single place he's ever been, he's done remarkably well. And people say, oh yeah, but he's been at all the best clubs. Well, he didn't start at the biggest clubs. He started in Parma, I think it was, and turned them into a big club. And he went to Napoli, and he actually did remarkably well with Napoli as well. So he's shown that he doesn't need to be at the biggest clubs to do it. It's just that he's such a good manager. He naturally, went to work for the big clubs. I think it might be a slightly difficult situation now because there's absolutely no doubt that he was promised funds, and I think he expected some in January, but that didn't arrive. And he was certainly promised it for the summer, and most football clubs are going to be affected, and Everton, I can't see how Everton won't be affected. So he's going to have to sort of do different things because he won't be able to bring 4, 5, 6 sort of big money players in. But he's a great coach, proven over so many years, and he's not lost his appetite for football. So he hasn't come just for a payday. He genuinely sort of came to have success with Everton, and he's still got that ability as a manager, as he did show at Napoli. Qualifying for the Champions League, getting them through the Champions League as well. He's top class, and he's got a good coaching team around him. And actually, I sort of suggested earlier that sort of football coming back now might actually benefit Everton a little because they were looking at European football, making it into the Europa League next season as being a very, very, very long shot. But he's a great coach, and he's got a good team around him. His son is quite a scientific coach. Danny Donachie is good on the sort of on the fitness side, brilliant on the fitness side, and I think Everton have been doing a lot of good work to get the players ready. And I can see them, with a great coach, sort of coming back and doing well, and you never know, it could just be that they can just sort of get on the coattails of that Europa League with other clubs who are maybe not as ready, or maybe finding it difficult, because I think some teams will struggle without the atmosphere or whatever, and then so it might just help Everton a little bit in that sense, in terms of what they want to achieve, and they definitely want to achieve European football this season, because financially that was always a big thing for them.
That'll be typical. Everton will qualify for the Europa League, and there'll be no European football next season because of quarantine or whatever. But
there will be European football, but again, will they be allowed to allow fans to travel? I doubt it. But I think the clubs will, and I think that that's the kind of the way forward now. The Europe. They're going to try and finish the Champions League and the Europa League this season. So, definitely next season, I'm sure.
I mean, I think just finally with the European thing, because I think it'd be a good way to finish, is how do you see, because me and Ped have been speaking about this, how did they start the Europa League? Because the qualifying starts next month normally. Well, that's not going to be on the table, is it? Do you think it'll be a case of all of those minor leagues are just going to be cut away for this 1 year? Because I know in the FA Cup, they're talking now about next year's competition just starting at the first round with no, I think there was 739 teams in it last season, and this year there's going to be, I don't know, 64 or something, just cutting away all the preliminary rounds. You think Europe would have to do that? Because it'd have to, surely, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, they're going to have to do something. There's a few options on the table, apparently. There is that, looking at getting rid of all the preliminary rounds. Probably a more sensible idea would be to get rid of the groups, and just have it as a kind of straight knockout, because that way you're not doing quite as much travelling and especially in the early part of the next season's competition, which will still be this year. You can envisage there's still a virus around in Europe, and there's some certain danger in travelling for the clubs themselves. So maybe they just say, we'll change the format for one season. I think that would be a sensible idea, but obviously they're still looking at that, and they still haven't decided how they're going to finish the competition this season, though I suspect, and I strongly suspect, it will be a kind of almost like a mini tournament sort of thing, one-off games, and maybe based in one place. That could be the way for that to finish.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's probably the only way that it can finish. I'm going to put you on the spot here. The last question before I let you go and get back to your busy day is give us a date when you think the Premier League will resume.
Okay, yeah, you can put me on the spot because I'm prepared for this. I'm going to give you a date. I'll give you a match.
Okay.
Okay, June the 20th, Everton v Liverpool. There you go. That is what I believe.
Okay.
I'm not going to say more on it, but June the 20th, Everton v Liverpool. Be interesting.
You just got me all nervous again now for no reason. June the 20th, well, there you go. It's, that seems probably about right. We'd heard the 12th, and then we knew that people wanted to put it back a little bit given the Watford situation and the Bournemouth and everything going back. But so June the 20th, very, very interesting, David. Not a game I'd be looking forward to, the first game back, but what can you do? What can you do? Go on.
For me, that is actually, if that were the case, then that would be a great game for Everton because, obviously there's nothing to lose for Everton in that sense in the game. It is the first game back after a big break. Nobody's got any great expectations, but, Liverpool are trying to win the title still, and Everton can beat them and, get some local bragging rights. I actually think I mean, there's some logistical things, to sort out. But what a game to come back with! I don't think there's a better game to come back with, and the TV will definitely be thinking that way as well. So, an Everton fan, as an Everton fan, you'd be saying, 100%, give me that game. Let's play that game while Liverpool still can't win the league. But because they need to beat Everton and then go on and win another game. So that you'd want to play Liverpool to beat them to prolong them having to win the league as an Everton fan, for sure.
They'll be probably accurate that, and we'll beat them when none of our fans are in the stadium to witness it. Yeah, it'll be great. And just finally, sorry, this just come back into me. Just very finally, what's your opinion on the neutral venue? Do you think it's better for them just to play at the stadiums like they are in Germany? Or do you think that the neutral venue thing should be held up and everybody should play at neutral venues?
I'm glad you've asked me that because it's sort of angered me a tiny bit about neutral venues. It was kind of the police and actually the government a little bit pushing the neutral venue idea. And to me, that smacks a bit of this whole thing we've always had in this country around football fans as being this different breed who have to be treated in a certain way. And I think it was I've heard the word insulting bandied around. I think it's even worse than that. I think it's kind of slightly dehumanizing because what you're saying is football fans can't be trusted to behave like the rest of society. Like, I mean, Dominic Cummings doesn't behave like the rest of us, but most of us have respected this lockdown, and you don't see mass, like in America, people protesting, taking guns out, saying, I want my right. It's all crazy. This country, you've not seen that. We've respected, as I say, apart from, unless you're a Tory bigwig and you can do whatever you like. But so why are football fans going to be different? Why are 40,000 people going to stand outside Goodison if they're playing Liverpool? It's to me, it's not only insulting, it is dehumanising and wrong. And I think you've got to come at it a different way and say, we've trusted the people so far in this lockdown. We want to trust them again. And why not? I think the police are capable of dealing with it. I think the clubs are capable of presenting a coherent argument to their fans and a compelling case not to turn up outside grounds. And I think, let's not go down that road, because we know where it takes us. When you dehumanise football fans, when you make them out to be these people that you cannot be trusted in any way, that are going to do these violent, crazy, terrible things, then we end up in a terrible place. So I actually believe they will be played on each club's home stadiums now, home and away, as it should be. I think that will be the case, and I think it's right. I really do.
David, brilliant chatting to you today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. You had to sleep back your hair to do it as well. But it looks good. Yeah. It looks good, mate. It looks good. Listen, thanks a lot.
I've enjoyed it. It's been great. And actually, I've just noticed the sun's come out as well, so I can get back in the garden now.
Go and enjoy the sun, and listen, stay safe. Thanks very much. And when we can, get back in and see us very soon.
I'll be out next to you.
Yeah, definitely. Cheers, David. Thanks a lot.